Good evening, class. This is week 6. This is our final Zoom session. I'm having some technical difficulties tonight. I'm hoping that I'll be able to load this up on our YouTube channel so that you can watch the review of it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I know that you are working on your final papers. Some of you have submitted some assignments that were overdue. Uh, Owing to technical issues, perhaps with the hurricane and other things. So I know that you're trying to wrap that up this weekend. So I'm not going to make this a very long class live session. But I do want to encourage you to get any and all assignments in before Sunday at midnight. Uh, Sunday the let's see 13, 14, Sunday the 15th, of course, as you know, at midnight. After that time, you will no longer have access to the course to submit any assignments. Furthermore, I won't have access to the course in some ways as well. You'll still have access to your grades. You'll be able to see I believe anyway, my comments on this work that you have submitted, and of course to see your grades. So you do want to get those assignments submitted. Anything is better than nothing. Nothing definitely has to go down as a zero. You will earn some points if you submit your papers, even if it's not many. It's better than a zero. That might make the difference in your grades. So I know, and for some people, it's been a challenging time owing to hurricanes and other things such as that. We've gone through a lot in the last 6 weeks just as a country, um, with 2 hurricanes really. Um, on the tail end of Hurricane Harvey that impacted Texas, then Hurricane Irma in Florida, where I'm at, and I know a couple of students are here in Florida as well as Puerto Rico, and perhaps some have family there. So we've been through a lot. I won't mention everything that we've gone through. There's just not enough time. Nevertheless, in this course on psychology, we've been able to look at some things that I think are pertinent to organizations, um, whether they be your family or church or where you work, that can apply to many different things. This week we're talking about the sacred cow, an interesting topic nonetheless, not talked about much. Perhaps for many of you it was the first time you heard the term, or at least heard the term used in a situation such as this, where we're applying it to organizational practices. I'm sure you've seen the video by now. The gentleman presenting in the video does a very nice job. He has a very good example of what a sacred cow is, a very tangible example of something that was costing an organization time and money that was no longer necessary. Uh, and some of you have done a wonderful job in your class discussions pointing out that as well within your organizations. I've mentioned to at least a couple of students the importance, if you will, of technology and how that is going to make a lot more sacred cows in organizations. Some of you have mentioned going paperless in your organization. I believe it was Tiffany who brought that up, and certainly that is hard for some people to get their mind around, that there won't be something tangible to hold, a report or something like that they have in a file somewhere. But it is nonetheless a very good thing in most cases to go paperless, and you can share files rather than making copies. People can get an electronic file, on their email, or shared in some kind of a Word document that they can look at and maybe edit or make comments on, if you will, or make comments about. So that's just one example. The funny thing about sacred cows is, you don't really know they're there by definition. You go in every day and look right at them. It's not until you take a proactive and intentional look at your organizational practice that they may become evident. And sometimes even then, they don't become evident. That's why it's good to have an outside consultant come in, or maybe someone from a different department come in to take a look at things and question why, which I'm going to get into in just a second, because they'll have fresh eyes and they can ask questions. And maybe there's a very valid reason to keep this practice in place, and you don't want to get rid of it. You don't want to get rid of things that are working. You don't want to make change just for the sake of making change. Um, we do need change agents. We need constant improvement. I think that's a key. We talk about change often, and we need to talk more about improvement and frame it in that way. So, one of the things that I did want to mention about this issue of having a sacred cow is how to provide the feedback. When people are assessed in their work, it is, and we can't minimize this, it can be very emotional, especially for professionals who have spent time training and formal education to learn how to do their job and learn how to become a professional in their area and be an expert in their area. For someone to come in and espouse that something that they're doing is not effective, it has a very hurtful connotation to it many times. So there's a way to approach someone's practice, organizational practice, that is key, and you need to approach it in the professional way. And there's ways, pragmatic ways you can do that, just by framing a question rather than saying that's outdated, that's a sacred cow, that doesn't make sense to me anymore, and putting the person on the defensive, because maybe it does in some cases, but oftentimes it doesn't. You change the way you present it. I wonder what it would look like if we didn't have this procedure. I wonder what it would look like if we cut out the middleman here. I wonder what it would look like if we went paperless. I wonder if we would save time. And then you actually start to investigate that more from a collaborative stance rather than evaluative or sitting across the table from someone telling them what you're seeing doesn't make sense. It's as we've talked about. It's not easy for people to hear these things sometimes, oftentimes, many times, in most cases. So the way that you approach this is very important. I think, again, it may have been Tiffany I mentioned that some of the folks who had a lot more experience, the more seasoned professionals, resisted going paperless because they had done business a certain way for many, many years. And it's hard to get you, if it'd be the same for any of us. We're all human. Hard for many of us to get our mind wrapped around, pardon me, doing something so differently. So the way that you approach it can be key to getting change, making change. And one of the things also is when you are approaching this, you have a meeting or you get together and you approach this and say, listen, we're going to be looking at all of our practices here. We're going to be looking at the way that we operate and seeing if we can make things more efficient. That may mean that we have to make some changes in order to improve. We're going to maybe hear some things that are surprising to us. Some things might be kind of hard to take. So we're going to go into this with eyes wide open. We're going to not give you a surprise or a I gotcha, I can't believe you're still doing this, with the idea that we want to get collaboration and cooperation and buy-in from the very beginning rather than reacting to it. We want to be proactive rather than reactive. So we're going to be proactive by getting everyone together and saying, listen, we're going to evaluate our operations here. Maybe we'll find some things that are going to make life easier for us. Maybe we won't. We don't know yet. We're going to take a look at it. That's being proactive. Being intentional in the fact that we are in this business, or we're running this organization or this nonprofit to make things better, to sell more widgets, or to help families get along better in a nonprofit, or to spread the gospel if it's a church. So how can we look at things and make things more efficient in order to get to our bottom line, which is our mission statement. So mission statements come into play here with a sacred cow, or a sacred cow hunt, I think we're calling it here. So we talked a little bit about mission statements at some point in this course, and it's very important, and I'm very passionate that people know their personal mission statement and people know their organizational mission statement. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people. I'm in this profession for quite a while now, and I'll ask them in a very non-threatening way, but maybe someone high up in an organization, what is your mission statement of this church? What is your mission statement of this school? What is your mission statement of this organization, of this company? And so many times they really not only don't know, but they have no idea what it is. And I think it's important to know the mission statement. That proves you know the mission, proves you know the bottom line that you're trying to get to. Covey spoke of, begin with the end in mind. The end is the mission statement. If your church's mission is to spread the gospel, to spread the good news, then that's the end. How do we get there the most efficient and effective way? Something that comes up in churches quite often that in my particular church, in my denomination, across different churches, and other people I talk to, is this idea of literature evangelism. I'm certainly not against it. My father-in-law did that for many years. My father did that for a period of time. I've done it as my father-in-law and father did it in order to make a living. Myself, I've not done it to make a living, but I have passed out literature and what we call tracts in my church. Maybe you are familiar with that term. And people think it's a great way to do things. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but when we really look at it, in my experience, the people that I've talked to kind of think it really is not as effective as it once was. And oftentimes people will say that they're doing that in order to avoid doing some of the really more meaningful work. They just go hand someone a tract or some literature. And perhaps it's the approach that with which we do it. But in these days and times, it basically, and there's the thing is there's research done on this, and you can look it up. We don't get a lot of return on our investment for the time and effort that we put into that. We don't get a lot of folks coming to church. We don't get a lot of folks becoming baptized or being baptized because of literature evangelism. Again, I'm not knocking it. Some of you may have a lot of success with it, and there are people who do have success with it. But by and large, it was a big part of churches 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 years ago. That was one of the biggest outreaches and ministries that we had, both paid and unpaid. And sometimes now people want to hang on to that as that main thing, and the evidence shows it's not the main thing. It's more of an interpersonal connection, inviting people to your home and having events. And there's some issues with that. Some people take events, are accused anyway of taking events to entertainment and things like that. That's a whole other story. We're talking about sacred cows here. I don't want to go too far afield. Pardon me. But that's one example of what that's like. But it's hard when we approach folks, oftentimes seasoned Christians in the church, and to sort of ask them, how is that going? That literature evangelism, handing out tracts. And I'm not saying we should stop that by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just pointing out what the research says and some of the things that I've heard. I've not had what we call success with it. I suppose I've had more success in doing workshops, offering family workshops and things like that, bringing some folks in that are within the church and having them bring some neighbors in. That's my personal experience. That doesn't mean it's the only way to go. You have to find your purpose that I know that God has for each of His children. He has a purpose for us. I've mentioned that many times. So I did say I wasn't going to keep you on here long. We're going to go with our Bible text, and I won't keep you on here the whole time. I do wish we could have had folks join in. Nonetheless, I know you're busy. We're all busy. It would have made a nice sort of class live interaction. We could have had some feedback and things such as that. Nevertheless, I definitely appreciate you taking the time to watch the recording of this, and hopefully we'll be able to get that on. Clearly, if you're watching this, I was able to put it on YouTube. I've just had some technical issues this evening. Nevertheless, okay, so our Bible text, let's go with, let me think here. Well, it doesn't have to be. We're going to go with my wife's favorite psalm, Psalm 91. It's a beautiful psalm. Which psalm is not beautiful, I don't know, but my wife, since I've known her, has not changed that, and I've known her, my gosh, 30 years, I think, almost 30 years, 29 years. Anyway, that's always been her favorite psalm, and it does bring her a lot of comfort, and of course brings me comfort too. So that'll be our Bible scripture that you can get your credit for. Other than that, it's been a fantastic journey with you, with each of you. I'm grateful for each and every one of you. I look forward to maybe having you in class again. I look forward to maybe hearing about God's working in your life as you move forward. You'll remain in my prayers, each of you. And I'm grateful for you, and I wish you all the best as you go on. I'll be talking to you in the class through text and through the message board. All my best.